Hola.
So let's see, where do I begin? Yes, history of Spain. Let's start in 32,000 BC, just because it sounds old, and here in the Iberian Peninsula, where the first inhabited modern humans showed up, the
Even know what
Cro-Magnons.
that
There's
means.
evidence everywhere today, especially in this cave. What are you looking at? Where archaeologists found a tool, a flint, and it said it was made 1.4 million years ago on the side of it. Now these Cro-Magnons, who were all modernized humans and all, set up these prehistoric human settlements. They painted too because they had a lot of time on their hands, like I do, around the 15,000 BC mark in a lot of these caves. Okay, maybe that was a bit far back to start Spain's history. Let's start with the Phoenicians, Celtics, and the Greeks. Maybe that's a good starting point. The Phoenicians were actually the first and major civilizations of the ancient world to set their sights on Spain. It was even said that these guys were the world's first rulers of the sea. Of course, other civilizations came in the area as well. But rather than conquerors, they were traders, and that's what brought them to Spain at around 1000 BC. They had a bunch of stuff with them like perfumes, ivory, jewelry, oil, wine, and textiles, and they wanted Spanish silver and bronze. But after the Phoenicians, Greek traders began to arrive in 7th century BC, or Greek, and made trading settlements along the Mediterranean coast. The Greeks decided they liked it, we like it, and hung out along the northeast coast in the 9th century BC, and the other guys took the south coast. Yeah, you guys stay there, we stay here. The Celts came in as well, originally from Central Europe, brought beer making, so they were super important. Beer. They lived in the northwest in hill fort villages and merged with the Iberians, native inhabitants, but later combined together into the Celt-Iberians. Anyways, from about the 6th century BC, the Phoenicians and Greeks were pushed out of the western Mediterranean by the Romans. You get out. Now the Romans were bullies. Yeah, we were bullies. And pushed around the Iberians and Celts, or Celt-Iberians, who were nervously keeping their remaining space while this was all going on. There were numerous wars going on with different civilizations within, not just the Celt-Iberians. Like these guys, General Hannibal even brought his elephants to threaten Rome, but nope, didn't happen. And although the Romans already had plenty, the Romans wanted it all, mine, and started this war from 181 to 133 BC. Guess who won? It took a while though, but the conquest was completed in 19 BC. But the Romans were around the Iberian Peninsula for 600 years, called it Hispania, and after they rid the local tribes, taking close to 200 years, the Roman way of life was adopted. Everyone was forced to culturally Romanize. Yeah, I'm Roman, kinda. And the Romans welcomed the now defeated local leaders to their Rome home and into their gang. Welcome, although it was kinda your home in the first place, but now ours. Romans loved to build stuff. Building here, building there. They actually added so much to the development of Spain, giving Hispania a road system, aqueducts, temples, theaters, amphitheaters, and bathhouses. Spain's languages today, its religion, and its laws actually originated from this period. Yeah, we're significant. The uninterrupted Roman rule and settlement left a stamp of Rome on Spain forever. But after building too much and because of a new threat that came in, they ran out of money, and in the 5th century, the Roman Empire fell. We're broke. The new guys on the block were the Visigoths, Germanic tribes, and they came a-knocking right after and took out the remaining Romans in force, who ran out like chickens. It was easy pickings as they took advantage of the empire's weakening defenses, plundering its borders. They even sacked Rome itself in 410, but they later became allies. Don't hurt me, I'm your friend. They ruled with roughly 200,000 Visigoths and held the millions of sophisticated Hispano-Romans, all while looking down on the Roman ways. You guys suck. And the Roman era had come to an end. So after everyone was kicked out, the Visigoths decided to get a king, because that was the cool thing to do when you conquered. And this guy ruled it until the early 8th century, where it fell to the Muslims. But it fell mostly because of famine, disease, and little arguments between the elites. We could never get it together. The Hispania territory, named by the Romans, Hispania, was switched to this name by the Muslims. Foreign invasion was repeating all the time in early Spanish history of empires that rose and fell on Spanish soil, but they always came from somewhere else, not from within. But you'll see that pattern would slowly change to transform into a struggle for the soul of Spain itself later. Keep watching. But the death of Prophet Muhammad in far-off Arabia in 632 had sent shockwaves far and wide, and Spain too would soon feel its effects. We feel its effects. Under Muhammad's successors, a new religion spread with extraordinary speed. Much of the Middle East became theirs by 656, and by 682, Islam had reached the shores of the Atlantic in Morocco. Spain, and with it, now lay within sight just over the ridge. I can see you. The Muslims chose a good time to arrive into Spain, with the Visigothic kingdom looking broken up and all, and the Iberian Peninsula was in a perfect condition for invasion. And again, Spain again had become a distant outpost for someone else's empire. Yeah, we're in the middle. But from the middle of the 8th century to the mid-11th century, the frontier between Muslim and Christian territory lay across the north of the peninsula and south. Islamic cities such as this, and this developed with beautiful palaces, mosques, gardens, universities, public baths, and bustling markets. Yeah, we built this. It's beautiful. These rulers allowed freedom of worship to the Jewish and the Christians under their rule. The Jewish mostly flourished, but Christians had to pay a special tax. So most either converted to Islam or left for the Christian north. We're leaving. Then everything switched, dominated next by the long Christian reconquest from Muslim rule. Now it's our turn. You're going down. The Christian reconquest of the Iberian Peninsula began in about 722 at this place and ended with the fall of Granada in 1492. Yeah, it took a while, but we took you. It was 8 centuries of misadventures, stirring victories, and missed opportunities, during which even the different Christian kingdoms were at war with each other, as with Muslims. The Christians were on a roll. They went into Portugal, Aragon, and these guys. But after a bunch of wars by 1250, nearly all of Hispania was back under Christian rule, where they then fell to the Catholic monarchs. The Spanish Inquisition begins. Spain's new Catholic rulers made it clear from the beginning religious coexistence was a thing of the past. You guys are the past. Now you guys follow us. We the new. Not content with territorial conquest, the Catholic monarch started the Spanish Inquisition to weed out those threatening the Catholic Church. You are going down. On March 31st, 1492, Fernando and Isabel forced all the Jewish who refused Christian baptism to leave Spain within 2 months on pain of death. Up to 100,000 converted and some 200,000 left Spain for other Mediterranean destinations. You guys suck. We're leaving. Muslims also later on ordered to convert to the Christian faith or leave. Man, not us too. Around 300,000 underwent baptism and stayed, becoming known as these guys, converted Muslims, but it was barely skin deep and they never assimilated. Now the Catholic monarchs felt that the Iberian Peninsula was secure. They turned their attention elsewhere. It opened up a whole new world of opportunity for a new and confident Christian Spain. In the same year that this was going on, Christopher Columbus, as we all know him as, planned to lead a great expedition to the New World in 1492, sponsored by the Spanish Crown. Yeah, we paid for it. It was actually a voyage across the Atlantic in search of a new trade route to Asia, but they found someplace else. Oops. But I'll talk about that in a sec. Isabella and Ferdinand, Queen and King in 1492, said, yeah, you should go overseas to find the Orient, and Christopher Columbus became the first known European to reach the New World, except after this guy, a Viking, that actually makes Christopher Columbus the second most known European who had reached the New World, but who's keeping score? We Vikings do. And it presented an entirely new continent Spain's society could spread its militaristic and crusading efforts to.
I just wanted to know that I will throw you down the stairs.
So Columbus sailed from here on August 3rd, 1492, with 3 small ships and 120 men. They actually hated the trip. Where's Asia? And a mutiny almost happened, but look, land! They arrived on the island of the Orient, the Bahamas, and they found Cuba and this place. Columbus returned to a hero's reception from the Catholic monarchs in Barcelona, 8 months after his departure. Thanks for finding the Bahamas. Columbus made 3 more voyages, founding the city of Santo Domingo, finding Jamaica, Trinidad, and other Caribbean islands. But he died in 1506, knowing he was never able to reach Asia. So what? I still got paid. Anyways, the expeditions led to great wealth into Spain, income for the state where Spain became a dominant power of Europe for the next 2 centuries. Spain, with all the extra coin, got their hands in everything. The world was at the taking.
Hola.
Anyways, the expeditions led to great wealth into Spain, income for the state where Spain became a dominant power of Europe for the next 2 centuries. Spain, with all the extra coin, got their hands in everything. The world was at the taking. Mine, all mine. And they established colonies in North Africa from the Atlantic Moroccan coast to Libya.
Hola.
A lot of these areas are still under Spanish control today. The Spanish Empire was actually the first global empire. It was also one of the largest empires in world history. Yeah, we the largest. In the 16th century, Spain and Portugal actually competed with one another for European global exploration and colonial expansion in opening of trade routes across the oceans. But Spain's ruthless conquistadors, such as these guys, later followed Columbus's trail, seizing sections of the American mainland for Spain. By 1600, Spain controlled nearly all of present-day Mexico and Central America, a large strip of South America, all the biggest Caribbean islands, and Florida. That was a lot of work.
I just want you to know that I will throw you down the stairs.
Spanish conquistadors even removed the Aztec, Inca, and Mayan governments with help from local factions and took control of vast stretches of land. You backstabbing little. The New World Empire was actually pretty disappointing at first, as the natives had little to trade. Disease was everywhere, like smallpox and measles that the colonizers brought with them, devastating the native populations, especially in the densely populated regions of the Aztec, Maya, and Inca civilization. And this reduced the economic potential of the conquered areas. But then silver was found, and in the 1520s, large-scale extraction of silver from the rich deposits of Mexico began. Silver shipments went into the Spain economy, leading to the importation of luxuries and grain. We love silver, and a little of that gold too. The new colonies sent huge cargoes of silver, gold, and other riches back to Spain. They enjoyed a monopoly on this trade and grew into one of Europe's richest cities. So all this led to Spain enjoying a cultural golden age in the 16th and 17th centuries. They dominated the oceans with its experienced navy and ruled the European battlefield with its fearsome and well-trained infantry. But of course we can't forget religion, and it spread strongly through the Spanish Empire. Spain even brought the Christians to the New World, bringing a strong role in the expansion of Spain's empire. Conquering with religion worked in the past, right? Now, it wasn't just the Americas that the Catholic monarchs thought should be theirs. Let's think bigger and take it all. So Isabel and Fernando embroiled Spain into European affairs by marrying their 5 children into the royal families of Portugal, the Holy Roman Empire, and England. You go there, you go there, and you go there. After Isabel's death in 1504 and Fernando's in 1516, the thrones passed to their grandson Carlos I, who arrived in Spain from Flanders in 1517, age 17. In 1519, Carlos was succeeded to the Habsburg Islands in Austria and was elected Holy Roman Emperor. Wow, I'm a Roman Emperor and get to wear this. But it meant he now ruled all of Spain, the lower countries, Austria, several Italian states, parts of France and Germany, and the expanding Spanish colonies in the Americas. That's a lot to do. Spain's world empire probably reached its greatest territorial extent in the late 18th century, but it was under the Habsburg dynasty in the 16th and 17th century that it reached the peak of its power, and then it started to decline. It seems the experts say they just became too busy to manage it all. Spain's first Habsburg ruler, Charles I, became central to the struggles of all of Europe, and because of his widely scattered domains, was not often in Spain. Too busy. I'm too busy. The armies were too spread out without having enough of a population to support everywhere, even with the Allies. Others noticed this, the breaking up of power, and started an 80-year war from the 1560s. Yeah, not 20 or 40 or 65, but 80, exactly. The Dutch armies came in and consumed much of the Spanish expenditure during the later 16th century. Other expensive failures came as well, like the invasion of Protestant England in 1588 that produced the worst military disaster in Spanish history. Economic and administrative problems weakened the Spanish economy as well. We got problems everywhere. Rising inflation, financially draining wars in Europe, and ongoing aftermath of expulsion of the Jewish and the Moors from Spain. And Spain's growing dependency on silver imports combined to cause several bankruptcies that caused economic crisis throughout the country. Wow, that was a mouthful. But it all started to suck. So much of the fabulous wealth from Spain's American and other colonies was squandered on lavish royal lifestyles and on indulgences that did little to better their lives of ordinary Spaniards. You know, I like that dress. I like your shoes. We need more. The result was a deeply divided country, repeated battles, a fair share of external wars, and the population got poorer and poorer. There was also the Great Plague of 1596 to 1602, killing 600,000 to 700,000 people, or about 10% of the population. And economically, the plague destroyed the labor force as well, creating a psychological blow to an already problematic Spain. Suck became suckier. Then the Spanish Golden Age started the Spanish-speaking countries of Latin America, with the political decline and fall of the Habsburg had begun. But through it all, art and expression became popular. Europe's greatest architects and painters were born. Times were crappy, so might as well paint. This guy, and this guy. Music as well. This guy, and this guy. Spanish literature blossomed as well. And yet Spain being weak, backward-looking monarchs, a highly conservative church, and an idle nobility allowed the economy to stagnate, leading to food shortages and gross inequalities between the haves and have-nots. Spain lost Portugal and faced revolts in Catalonia, Sicily, and Naples. Silver shipments from the Americas shrank as well. But this was also Europe's age of enlightenment. Spain's powerful church were at odds with the rationalism that trickled in from France. 2/3 of the land was in the hands of the nobility and church, and inequality and unrest were everywhere. Yeah, it sucked for everyone. Out of confusion, Spain actually declared war on France, only to make peace with the French Republic 2 years later. Let's make war, then peace. With this lost economic power, Spain became culturally and politically a follower of absolute France, but not quite an official ally. An example was in 1805, a combined Spanish-French navy was beaten by the British fleet under Admiral Nelson off of here, putting an end to Spanish sea power. Thought I'd throw that in. But in 1807, French forces poured into Spain, supposedly on the way to Portugal. Yeah, we're just passing through. Surprise. But in 1808, this had led to becoming a French occupation of Spain.
You don't see that every day.
Tricked you good. And this guy was forced to abdicate in favor of Napoleon's brother, Joseph Bonaparte. Hey bro, could you rule Spain for me? I'm kind of busy. It happened like this. After briefly opposing revolutionary France early in the French Revolutionary Wars, Spain was into an uneasy alliance with its northern neighbor, only to be blockaded by the British. This led to the invasion of Spain in 1808 under Napoleon I, Emperor of the French, triggering the Peninsular War. The 2nd of May, 1808, was the beginning of the popular Spanish resistance against Napoleon. Napoleon ridiculed the army as the worst in Europe. Bonjour, you guys are the worst. Spain initially sided against France in the Napoleonic Wars, but the defeat of her army early in the war led to this guy, the Spanish leader at the time, to align with the revolutionary French. The former Spanish king was dethroned by Napoleon, who put his own brother on the throne, and the Spaniards said, hell no, and that's not going to happen. In Madrid, crowds revolted, so the Spanish, as they did in their ancient past, retreated into the mountains to regroup and launch new attacks and raids. Guerrilla forces sprang up all over the country and tied down huge numbers of Napoleon's troops.
I'm coming from the north, from the south. You don't even know. I'm just like exploding into action.
It was a massive drain on Napoleon's military and economic resources. Spain was even aided by the British and Portuguese, led by the Duke of Wellington. Yeah, we helped. Across the country, Spaniards took up arms, guerrilla style, reinforced by British and Portuguese forces, and the French were finally driven out after their defeat at Vitoria in 1813. But this was the reason as well. After Napoleon's disastrous 1812 campaign in Russia, Napoleon began to recall his forces for the defense of France against the advancing Russians, leaving his forces in Spain increasingly unmanned and on the defense against the advancing Spanish, British, and Portuguese armies. The Visigoths started to suck again. At the Battle of Vitoria in 1813, an allied army under the Duke of Wellington decisively defeated the French, and in 1814, this guy was restored as King of Spain. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, in the Americas, Spain lost all of its North and South American territories, except for Cuba and Puerto Rico, in a complex series of revolts. Spain was at war with Britain, and the British Navy cut off its ties to the overseas empire. The colonies then achieved economic independence from Spain and set up temporary government with no mother country involved. Yay, we're free. Multiple revolutions enabled the colonies to break free from the mother country. In 1842, the armies of the generals this guy and this guy defeated the last Spanish forces. The final defeat came at this place in southern Peru. All correctly pronounced. Barely able to hold itself together, Spain had little chance of maintaining its few remaining colonies. In 1898, Spain lost Cuba, the Philippines, Guam, and Puerto Rico after being defeated in the Spanish-American War by the United States.
Where was I? Hola.
For a country that had ruled one of the greatest empires of the age, this sealed the fall from grace. Yeah, we fell apart big time. Then World War I came. Spain was neutral, spared the country from carnage, but the conflict caused massive economic disruption, with the country experiencing at the same time an economic boom with the increasing foreign demand of products, and the drop of imports brought hefty profits. In the late 1920s were actually prosperous for Spain, up until the worldwide Great Depression hit in 1929. In early 1930, bankruptcy and massive unpopularity became popular from being unpopular, which became popular. Then after all these years, the Republic made an attempt. National elections in 1931 brought in a government composed of socialists, Republicans, and centralists. A new constitution gave women the vote, granted autonomy-minded Catalonia its own parliament, legalized divorce, stripped Catholics of their status as the official religion, and banned priests from teaching. But soon after, the devastating Spanish Civil War began. During the Spanish Civil War, in many ways, the seeds of division were always there for centuries, with the inequalities that flowed from Spain's colonial riches and in the equally profound social divisions that began to surface in the 19th century. Yeah, you guys took all the riches, now we pissed. By the early years of the 20th century, Spain was locked in an unending power struggle between the left-wing and conservative forces, with neither able to maintain the upper hand for long between the nationalists and the Republicans. On July 17, 1936, the Spanish Army Garçon in this place rose up against the left-wing Popular Front government, followed the next day by Garçons on the mainland. The leaders of the plot were 5 generals, and among them was Francisco Franco. The Civil War had begun. Now this war split communities, families, and friends, and killed an estimated 350,000 Spaniards, but some others say more, and caused untold damage and misery, but both sides committed massacres. So it actually became a worldwide ideological battleground, with the right and left and many liberals against the Catholics and conservatives, and worldwide there was a growing sense that another world war was imminent and that it would be worth fighting for. Nazi Germany and fascist Italy came into the picture and supported the nationalists with planes, weapons, and men. 75,000 from Italy, 17,000 from Germany, turning the war into a testing ground for World War II. The Republicans had some Soviet planes, tanks, artillery, and advisors, but other countries refused to become involved, although some 25,000 French fought on the Republican side. Meanwhile, divisions among the Republicans erupted into fierce street fighting in Barcelona, with the Soviet-influenced communists completely crushing the anarchists, and these guys. But in the end, the nationalists under Franco won the war. The historians continue to debate the reasons. It was because of this. No, it was this. You don't know anything. They were apparently just much better unified and led by the Republicans, who fought amongst themselves endlessly and had no clear military strategy. The army actually went over to the nationalists, but it was very poorly equipped. There were no tanks or modern airplanes. The remaining Republican fronts collapsed. A civil war broke out inside the left as the Republicans suppressed the communists. Madrid fell in March 1939. The war cost between 300,000 and 1 million lives. It ended with the total collapse of the Republic and Francisco Franco as dictator of Spain, and he banned the left-wing and Republican parties and trade unions. Yeah, I'm the big boss now, get out of my way. The church was more powerful than it had been in centuries. After the war, many thousands of Republicans were imprisoned and up to 150,000 were executed between 1939 and 1943. Some 500,000 refugees escaped to France and remained in exile for years or decades. Franco's dictatorship, yeah, that's me. Under his rule, an estimated 100,000 people were killed or died in prison in the years immediately following the war. The hundreds of thousands imprisoned included many intellectuals and teachers. Others fled abroad, depriving Spain of a generation of scientists, artists, writers, educators, and more. Then World War II happened. Although Franco promised Hitler an alliance, Spain remained on the sidelines for World War II. Yeah, you know what? I think we'll stick this one out. Spain was officially neutral in World War II and remained largely economically and culturally isolated from the rest of the world. Spain's rule in Morocco even ended in 1967. Although militarily victorious in the 1957 to 1958 Moroccan invasion of Spanish West Africa, Spain gradually relinquished its remaining African colonies. The later years of Franco's rule saw some economic and political growth called the Spanish Miracle, including the birth of a tourism industry. Spain began to catch up economically with its European neighbors. But after World War II ended, Franco's Spain was excluded from the UN and NATO. But the Cold War started and the US wanted bases in Spain, and Franco agreed to the establishment of 4 in return for large sums of aid. Then in 1955, Spain was admitted to the UN. By 1965, the number of tourists arriving in Spain was 14 million a year. Yay, we love tourists. They called it this. Industry took off, foreign investment poured in, and the services and banking sectors blossomed. In 1960, fewer than 70,000 cars were on the road in Madrid. 10 years later, more than 500,000 clogged the capital streets. Yeah, we're having some great times now, finally. Spaniards' standards of living was improving, but the jails were full of prisoners, political ones, and large garrisons were still maintained outside every major city. The opposition in Franco's regime became steadily more vocal in 1965. The universities, trade unions began to make themselves confrontational. Ooh, you guys suck. But a few years later, Franco decided a successor, Prince Juan Carlos, because he was a safe bet. He's safe. He was a Spanish-educated grandson of this guy. That's why. So in 1969, Juan Carlos swore loyalty to Franco. You're a great guy, Franco. But the last prime minister, this guy, provoked violent opposition from right-wing extremists.
You are fired.
And Spain seemed to be sinking into chaos when Franco died on November 20th, 1975, when control was given to King Juan Carlos. Then came the transition to democracy. They say the transition began to democracy with the death of Franco on November 20th, 1975, while its completion is marked by the electoral victory of these guys on October 28, 1982. So Juan Carlos I, age 37, took the throne on November 22nd, 1975, 2 days after Franco's death. The new king's links with the dictator inspired little confidence in Spain, now clamoring for democracy. But Juan Carlos had kept his cards close to his chest. Here's my cards. Spain's way forward was hard to figure out after Franco's death. the country was divided as ever, and its helm was an untested new guy. Yeah, that's me. I'm the new guy in the house. Now, under its current 1978 constitution, Spain is a constitutional monarchy, and it comprises of 17 autonomous communities in 2 autonomous cities and a little education. Contraceptives, homosexuality, and divorce were legalized. The Madrid party and art scene formed and still a greater part of Spanish life. Then Gonzalez became prime minister for 14 years.
Ice cream!
The young and educated leadership came from the generation that had opened the cracks in Franco's regime in the late 1960s and early 1970s. But unemployment actually rose from 16% to 22% by 1986, and Spain actually joined the European Economic Community, EEC, now the European Union, bringing on a 5-year economic boom. Yeah, the good times are back. The middle class grew even bigger, and these guys established a national health system and improved public education, and Spain's women streamed into higher education and jobs. All looked good.
Awesome.
And in 1992, the 500th anniversary of the fall of Granada and Columbus's first voyage to the Americas celebrated its arrival into the modern world by staging the Barcelona Olympics and the Expo 92. The economy, however, was in a slump, and it came as no surprise when these guys lost the 1996 general election. But by joining the EEC, Spain experienced an economic boom during 2 decades, but it was cut painfully short by the financial crisis of 2008. Spain actually became the 4th largest economy in the Eurozone, but after 2008, the global economic recession hit Spain hard, with the bursting of the housing bubble and unemployment reaching over 27%, and the sharpest budget cutbacks were needed to stay in the Eurozone. Economists said in early 2013 that where once Spain's problems were acute, now they were chronic. Wow, what a history Spain has, and the story still continues. But through it all, this country still remains firmly democratic and largely peaceful. Just shows how far Spain has come, given its past and modern history. Well, tell me what you thought about the history of Spain in the comment section below. If you liked this vlog, please don't forget to give me a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell for more of my coming content here. Thank you for watching my vlog. Be free, gain wealth, and travel far.
Hola.